Whoa. So believe it or not, this is actually the freeway in Perth. In other countries it might be called the motorway or the main highway or the expressway, but as you can see, if you come driving at the wrong time in Perth, well, there's not a lot of express in the expressway. A lot of cars here trying to get home. I'm actually on my way down to pick up a brand new coffee machine, but that's not the subject of today's video, although that is definitely the highlight of my day. The reason I thought I'd do a video while I'm driving is because it struck me that you need a driver's license in order to drive. You have to pass the basic test, a written test in Perth, and then a practical test. And in theory, that piece of paper, that piece of plastic, once you've passed the test, tells you that you're now qualified, that you've got competent driving skills. Now, in reality, you could argue that competent driving skills actually only come after a number of years on the road and experiencing various things like this, peak hour traffic or stop-start traffic, or even having the occasional accident, just to actually start to be aware of the things that can happen on the road. Kids running out in front of you after school, or just knowing where the hot spots are, etc. And that made me think about database certification, because I've had some questions come in on Ask Tom about, is certification actually worth the paper it's written on? Should a DBA or developer get certified nowadays? And I think there are some parallels that can be drawn between certification and a driver's license. It provides a basic assurance that there's a moderate level of competence in the person that actually holds it. And that can give some assurances to employers who are looking to employ people, and also to colleagues of people that have certification, in the sense that if you go to that person asking for assistance or for some knowledge, that there's some assurances there that this person has a basic competence in the subject matter at hand. Of course, there's a big difference between an expert database administrator or a fully competent database administrator or developer than one that has just a basic level of competence. That said, I think certifications actually have a value, but not necessarily for perhaps the reason that maybe some people think it is. Now, the first thing I want to caveat is, yes, I know that there's a lot of criticism out there of people who get certifications just by grabbing one of those exam cram books or going to various websites, or even doing cheat tests where you can find out what the questions will probably be and then answering them and scraping by like that. Whilst that's something I obviously don't endorse or recommend, I also understand that the reality is IT professionals have to live in the real world, and that is a world where there is competition for jobs, and sometimes the job market is, cutthroat. And so if having a certification, even though you've achieved it by perhaps somewhat dubious means, but still valid, just using an exam cram or something like that, if that certification helps you, gives you a leg ahead of the competition when trying to get a job, then who am I to criticize people that do it that way? It's not something that I'm a fan of, but let's face it, you can't sit there and say, well, you should take a moral position and not get work or not be employed just because I think you should have a certain kind of level of experience to pass certification, not just maybe sneaking it through an exam cram. If you live in a geographic region of the world, or in a IT culture, or just in a job market that certification lets you get ahead, lets you get ahead of the market and get a job, then good for you. I think good for you. Well done. Having said that, I think certification is actually of tremendous value, but not for the certification itself. The thing I like about certification is it's a fantastic way of getting a nice broad perspective of where your knowledge set lies in the database development or administration areas. One of the cool things with certification is what will happen is you'll get tested upon the sort of broad brush range of all the technologies that apply to the database discipline, whether it be development or administration. The benefit of that is it actually is a good learning tool for you. I personally don't really care whether someone passes or fails the certification process. Employers may differ, but for me the real value is the fact that someone sat it and perhaps did some research and discovered more about themselves based on the certification questions. A good example that would be, up until the late 2000s, I'd worked on only a couple of systems that were using real application clusters. Since then I've worked on a lot, but up until then it was mainly single instance systems. And I remember looking at some certification questions about real application clusters and really not understanding the technology behind it. I didn't understand the terms of interconnect and lock management and global cache synchronization, etc. So it was a prompt to me to actually try find work which had more real application clusters sites going on, but also just to do a bit more reading up on those particular topics. I grabbed some books in those days. I think it was run by Steve Shaw and Julian Dyke on RAC, and just did some swatting up in terms of how to actually understand that technology better. So knowing where your shortfalls are is one of the benefits of doing certification. One of the challenges of certification obviously is that generally such things aren't free. So one thing I'd recommend is sit down with your manager or your employer and have a decent chat with them. Say, I want to do some certification processes, not because I'm looking to leave the company and etc., but a good manager would actually encourage you to become a better employee, even if it did mean leaving the company. A good manager mentors you to become a better person, a better IT professional. But sit down with your manager and say, I want to do certification, not necessarily about passing it, but to help identify my weak spots and to make me a better, more rounded developer or administrator, and therefore the company will benefit. In that way, hopefully your current employer will spruik up the money for those certification, perhaps training, or even just the exams. I think that's some way of getting the certification done for free in that sense. Really, there's no end to the amount of certification you can do. Now, I suppose the benchmark for that would be a friend of mine named Alex Zabala. Hopefully I haven't butchered his name in the pronunciation. He's based in Brazil. And if you go to his website, I'll put a link in the description below, he has done hundreds of certifications. I'm not saying you want to do that many, but certainly pick out the certification areas that you think you're weak in and perhaps focus on doing those exams to identify weak spots and moreover strengthen your knowledge. Another thing I don't want to do is dismiss the actual certification exams themselves. Yes, the basic level exams could perhaps be passed with a cramming process, but you can rest assured that inside the Oracle Education Center, they're always looking at ways to improve the validation process to make sure the questions are real-world questions with real-world answers and scenarios, such that we can get some decent value out of the certification answers and certification process. And let's not forget that there is actually a thing called the Oracle Certified Master. That is not a set of multiple choice answers. It is literally scenario-based workflow where you sit down with a machine and actually have to solve database administration problems in a real-world timed scenario in order to actually prove your competence in various levels of the database. So at that end, there is some really top-notch certification exams, but of course they come with a significant price tag. Anyway, finally the traffic has freed up and I can get my coffee machine in the next half an hour or so. So if this video has inspired you to get certified or perhaps update your existing certification, then it's achieved its purpose. I'm not on commission from the certification guys. I'm not getting any kickbacks. I'm just in, hopefully to make a better, stronger community of knowledgeable professionals. And hopefully certification is the first step that you'll use to actually then being a bigger part of the community. You'll start a blog, perhaps do some teaching at conferences. That's really my end goal here, to have a much bigger and broader community of people contributing to help other people succeed in their IT careers and with the Oracle database. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Ciao.